Okay, good vach everybody. We're up to Ches on Beis. Ches on Beis, the two dots, a little opposite the Toisvis, Agav Duchka de Sakina Bala. So we're discussing Shchita a little bit, and we're getting more into Masech the Chulin on as we go more and more. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda says the name of his great Rabbi Rav. Hatabach Sarich Shloisha Sakinam. Now we teach a tabach as a butcher. In those days, the butcher had a dual role. Not only was he the butcher, he was the shaykhid also. We have two separate. We have butchers and we have shaykhdim. Those days, the tabach was the shaykhid. So he needs three different knives. Achet sheshaykhid ba, that one, unique knife, the chalif that he would shecht with, and that's very, very precious, and you use it only for that. The achet shemachatich ba basar, and once when he shechted the animal, he had to go ahead and butcher the animal. So he needed a knife for what? For basar. V'yacha shemachatich ba chalavim, and one for nikor. They had to go ahead and take over the chalavim. Right? Well, nikor involves the geranasha, but I'm talking about that. We're talking about the chalev. The chalev, that's asa. So three: one for the shchita, one for the basar, and one for what? For the chalev. Fred the Gemara l'takin l'chada, v'lachtach by basar, v'hadalach by chalavim. Now, I understand that the chalif, the knife, that has to be separate. But why is it necessary two separate knives, one for basar, one for chalev? Go ahead and make one knife. And first you'll do the basar, and then you do the chalev. Again, what's your concern? Why do you need a separate? Because if you do chalev, it's going to adhere to the knife. And then when you cut the basar, you're going to have chalev, which is often a isuri karis, is going to be going and adhering to the basar. So just have one knife. First cut the basar, then you do the chalev, and then you wash it off. And again, instead of two knives, says Gemara, gezerah, we're worried. What are we concerned about? Right? What are we concerned about? Gezerah shem yechate chalavim v'yachkach basar. We're worried that first you may come to go ahead and cut the chalev, and then you will come to go ahead and cut the basar. Again, so if you do the chalev first, guys, if you do the chalev first, then you're going to have the shamnunis of the chalev clinging to the knife. You're going to cut the basar. So again, therefore, you need two separate knives: a knife for chalev and a knife for basar. Says the Gemara, even if you have two separate knives, hashta nami michtav lei, right? Why aren't you concerned that you may switch it around and you may come to go ahead and use the chalev knife on the basar? Says the Gemara, even that's rechinu trei islay hakera. Since you need two, you'll have a recognition. In other words, you'd make a mark. Many of us have you have a house of parva knife. Very often you put a tape around it, put a different color. You have a hecker that it's a different knife. So Mamela, once you have two separate knives, right, you'll have what? You'll have recognition. Okay, well, on Ches on Midbeis, we're about 9 lines up. One Rav Yehuda Marav, a new halacha. Hatabach tzarach shnei kelim shalmayim. The butcher, again the tabach, who's also the shaykhid, needs two separate kelim of water. Echad shemadiach by basar, ve'echad shemadiach by chalavim. One to wash off the meat and one to wash off the fat. Again, you don't want the fat coming in contact with the meat. We know the consistency of fat. It tends to be sticky and clingy, and you want a separate keli for both. Freding more the same kasha. Why don't you have two? And first you go ahead and wash the meat, and then you'll wash the what? The chalev, and then you don't have to worry. Says the Gemara, the same teretz. You may come to go ahead. If you have one, you may switch the order. You put the chalev in first. The chalev then will adhere to the walls of the kli, and then when you put the basar in, you wash the basar. You can have chalev on top of basar. Says the Gemara, hashtanami michvalei. When you have two, it's going to go ahead right and be switched. Says the Gemara, no, keeping this rechinut harti. Once you need two kalim, the same teretz. Islay hakera. You're going to make what? You're going to make a distinction. You make an identifying mark to know which is the which. Amar Meimar Mishmeid Rav Papa. Leilischayf inish kafle ilayv bisra. You shouldn't turn over the flanks of the meat on top of the basar, because the flanks have the forbidden chalev. The doiv tarba, the fat, doiv will flow. Ubola bisra, and the basar will go ahead and absorb it. So after the shchita, when you go ahead and start butchering the meat, be sure that don't have the flank inverted this way, because then the fat's going to be on top, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to get absorbed. Now, Usually, for absorption, you need some type of heat, right? Not cold. So you look at the bottom twice, this guys. Like this life inish kafli alavi bisra. Don't invert the flank. Hainu la'acha nituach miyad. This is after you butcher it immediately. Koidem shenitztani nabasa. Before the basa got a chance to get cold. Aval acha shenitztani. Once the basa got cold, ein lachosh. Then you don't have to worry. Kidchsiv vayasimu es hachalovim alachazais, and they placed the chalovim on top of the chest. You see, you're pasting the chalovim on top of the chest. This is much later on after it's butchered, and then you don't have to worry. So Toisis adds a little addendum. This halacha that we're saying, that don't invert it, to have the fats in a way that it can go ahead and flow and absorb in the meat, is dafka when it's very fresh. So again, then we speak about heat. It doesn't necessarily, in this case, mean very heat, mean very, very fresh, perhaps, and therefore more porous, and therefore what? It'll absorb the according to Toisis, it'll absorb the fat. Says the Gemara, Ihachi, if you're worried about absorption, ki taritzi nami, if you put it on, without inverting it, if you put it on top of I'm not exactly sure what it looks like, but if you put it on top of the butcher block, right? Doyiv tarba ubola bisra. In other words, in this, whatever one is, it's going to get absorbed. It says, well, no, that karma mafsik mitutoi. The membrane will go ahead and be mafsik mitutoi. Fred the Gemara, if the membrane's being mafsik, ichachi amid aleph, mi'iloi nami, when even if it's on top, if the fat's on top, also it'll go ahead and what, and the nami karma, there's a membrane there also that will be mafsik. So what are you worried about? It says, Aidi de mimashmasha yoda de tapcha mefatach. Since one is like, it seems to be more natural, and the membrane's intact. Whereas when you invert it and he begins patching around with it, he may come to go ahead and puncture it, and therefore what it's gonna make all. It seems the membrane also in the second scenario is thicker, so it's not, you're not going to go ahead and puncture it where this what you would. So that's the halacha. And continuing on, a bunch of halachas stated in the name of Yehuda Merav, right, regarding shchita. From Rabbi Yehuda Merav, Talmid Chacham Tzarich Yilmod Gimel Devarim. He has to know three things. Ksav, he has to know how to write, right? You think he has to know kasafis. Rashi says, Lichtov sheyoda lachtem shmo. He has to know how to sign his name. Ilu yoshev v'din oila edis. If he's going to be sitting in dinner and edis, he has to know how to write. So he has to know how to write. Shchita, and this is why we bring it in. He has to know how to shech. Umila, and he has to know how to perform mila. Those three things a Talmid Chacham should know how to do. Rashi says shchita la amin yodai. Again, the assumption is, guys, if he's a Talmid Chacham, he knows the halachas of shchita. So Rashi's telling you over here, it doesn't mean the halachas of shchita, it means the physical ability to go ahead and shecht, la'amin yadai, to direct his hand. L'kach, afilu shebaki bilchaseha. Even if his baki is in the halachas, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a physical action. He should be aware of this physical action. And indeed, the third physical thing, he should be able to do mila. He should be able to do all these things. Rav Chananya bar Shalmei Mishmei de Rav Amar, he says in the name of Rav an additional three. Amar Av Kesher Shel Tefillin uBirchas Chasanim V'Tzitzis. He should know how to make the kesher of the tefillin and Birchas Chasanim. The kesher of tefillin, there's a machlokes, a famous machlokes, but whether every single day you have to make the kesher. Rabbeinu Eliyahu holds that you make the kesher every single day, and we hold that when it says that the kesher means just putting it on. So she should be able to make this kesher. The idach, and Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav only the first three, shchita, mila, and ksav. Why do you consider these three tefillin, uberchas, chasanim, betzitzis? Hani shchichin. These are moshayich. Rashi says, what's moshayich? Tefillin, tzitzis, uberchas, chasanim. Those are moshayich. We have the exact. Tosfos says the exact opposite. We had it in Masechta Menachos that he said the opposite of the other three. But Vam Rav Yehuda Mishmuel called tabach she'eni yodei hilchos shchita, any tabach that doesn't know hilchos shchita, asalech mishchitasei. So this guy, even if he knows how to go ahead and direct his hand, he's got to know the halachas, right? The eluhin halachas shchita. What are the halachas shchita that he should be familiar with? These are the five halacha moshe misinai that we discussed in the psicha to the Masechta: shehiyah, darsa, chalada, hagrama, ve'ikor. Let's see Rashi, guys. Rashi is going to explain each one. It's good to see. Says Rashi, Shehi Drosha Chaloda Hagrama Ve'ikor, the Perika Shaychit, Tanan, Lekula, we're going to see it later on. Shehiyah, what's Shehiyah? Im shoha, if he delays, gedei shchitas behema, the time it takes to shecht another animal. That's this man. Shachat v'hitas aroish b'vasachas. What is darsa? That he's shachat v'hitas aroish b'vasachas. Shleichoylech v'hevi. Hainu drasa. That in other words, he chops the head off. He doesn't go back and forth, guys. Maybe darsa is that he pushes down and he seems to go ahead and cut through the simonim and the head in one motion. It's not dafka chop off the head, even if it just goes through the simanim without the moloch maybe. That is also. So shehiyah is delaying in the share of shchita. Trasa is pushing down without the moloch maybe motion. Shachar aveshet upasek hagageres. If he shechs the veshet is the food pipe, we call the esophagus. Upasek hagageres, and the gageres is the windpipe. The trachea is pasak. That's considered Hari Ikur, that's Ikur. Rashi says in another place, guys, it's lav dafka this order, but it's more mistabra, the physical mitzias, to pull out the windpipe than the food pipe. More mistabra, no, the physical mitzias, the anatomy of the animal, it's more mistabra. And what's finally, he hides the sakin. Havi chalada, that's called chalada. Kichulda, like a weasel, zu, hatchuva bechurin, that hides in a hole. So that is and now we're missing one more, is the hagrama. Hashoichim hatabas, have hagrama. The hatabas we'll see is the ring, the upper ring. We'll get to that, Bez Hashem. By the end of this, you'll know this code. So the cartilage, there's a cartilage and there's a tabas. If you leave the cartilage is where you should be shechting, and if it ends up in the tabas, then it's okay. So that is hagrama. So quickly going through them again. Shahiyah is delaying. Drasa is not doing molech, maybe is pushing down upon. Chalada is putting it between hiding it. It means you lose sight of the knife because it's hidden between the kan and the veshet. Hagrama is you shech chutz lemakom. Of shchita of ikar is you disattach one of the pipes. You shech one and you pull out one of the other. Yes, Nasan.
Gargeres, isn't the kana the windpipe? What's the gargeres you said is windpipe?
It's another name. Another name. It's another name. Yeah. My Kamash Malon, what is Shmuel telling us? Rabbi Yehuda learned by Rav, and then he learned by Shmuel. Shmuel gave him the nickname Shinana, sharp one, right? So now he's asking, what is exactly Shmuel telling me? My Kamash Malon, Kula Taninu. They're all Mishnayos, guys. These are all Mishnayos. So what's the Amora telling me that I know from the Mishnayos? It says, this person shechted in front of us 2 and 3 times, and V'shachet Shapir. And it's very, very good. So Ma'od Tema made the Idach Shapir Shapir, when that was very good, the first 2, Hainami, the 3rd time Shachar Shapir, even though no one was around, Kamash Velon, Kivand Loy Gomar, since what? He is not learned. In other words, this guy, you look at him, he's a mechanic, right? He's a mechanic. He does the job, right? So you'd say, you know what? This is great. So let's say he does it the 3rd time, you assume it's great also, but he doesn't know the halachas. I'd say the following: Zimnin de Shahi, maybe he will delay, Vidaris, or he'll push down upon. Peres Chaim says the other 3 are discernible. You'll be able to say, Chabadi seems to say you'll be able to see, Iko, you'll be able to see it's disattached, and Hagrama, you'll be able to see it's chutz l'makom. So that's why he focuses on these 2. Maybe he'll do one of these 2. V'lo yadan, he doesn't know, and he'll say it's good. V'lo yadan, he doesn't know. So therefore, that's what Shmuel's being machadish. Shmuel's being machadish that what? Unless he knows the halachas, even if he shechs and he does it well, you might think, oh, he does it well, good, Shrein, I could eat the 3rd time, Kamash Malon, that no. From Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, hatabach tzarich sheyivdoik b'simanim. The tabach, after he does the shchita, before they butcher up the animal, he has to check to he went through roiv simanim. This is halacha, guys. If you don't check, the animal you can't eat from the animal. If you don't check the siman that you cut roiv simanim, if you look in Chavhei, I think it is, the Ramah explains how they did it. They put their thumb in and pushed it up to see how it goes. It's very interesting. For Yeridea, many years ago, you had to learn shchita and treifis. Besides basa b'cholov, malicha and taruvis. Now you only have to learn taruvis, basa b'cholov, and malicha. And even malicha, a lot of people are not doing. But in the old days, you had to do shchita and treifis also. My Rebbe spoke about spending time in the Schlachthaus. He was a dayan in the Vilna Schlachthaus. He had a dayan present in B'shas the Shchita. We spoke about that, I don't remember. He told us a story once, but I don't recall the story. But anyway, so the tabach needs to be boydek b'simanim la'achas shchita. Right after the shechita, he has to go ahead to make sure he got roiv. Right, to make sure he got roiv, and according to the Rush, to make sure he got the makam hashchita. Rav Yosef, afana nami tanino. We're going to bring a raya. Now, guys, the raya, fellas, this is important. The raya we're going to slug up, but the halacha not. We're going to slug up the raya, but not the halacha. The halacha is you have to check the simonim. Afana nami tanina, we're going to try to bring a raya to it. The raya will be slugged up, but the halacha will not be slugged up. Okay? It says afana tanina. Reb Shimon Omer, imshah kidei bikur. If you delay the amount of time it takes to check, that's the amount of shahiyah. Says going to my lav kidei bikur simonim. Does checking mean checking the simonim? So if a raya, you have to check the simonim. Amalei Abaya said Abaya to what Rabbi Yosef. Loi, Hachiam Rabbi Yochanan, Kidei Bikur Chacham, to check the Chacham. In other words, to go, the Chacham has to check the knife, guys. So the halacha is the Chacham has to check the knife. So, Einachinami, you want to bring a riot speaking about Bikur what? The checking of the Simonim? No, it means the checking of the knife by a Chacham. If you're giving a time that the Chacham has to check, you're being subject to relativity. Depends where the chacham is. He could be far away, he could be closer. When we give shiurim in the Torah, we want to share that as what? That's consistent by all, right? So you can tell me it depends upon the bika of the chacham. It would depend where the chacham is located. Elakadei bika tavach chacham. The time it takes for a chacham who is the tavach. In other words, he's the Talmud Chacham. He's the one who would be doing the checking, and that's the shear of Bikur for Shahiyah, according to Rav Shimon. But in Achinami, there's no Bikur of Simonim. There's not a Raya Bikur Simonim. But as I told you guys, the halacha is you have to check. This Raya that you want to bring is Nishkan Raya, because it doesn't mean Bikur Simonim. It means Bikur of Al Yedei Tavach Chacham. Loi Badak Mai. So you guys, you see the halacha is like that. Because what's the Gemara's next shaila? If you slugged it up, what do you mean Loi Badak? Obviously, you have to check. When the Gemara is clearing Loi Badak, in other words, good, you slugged up the Raya, but Loi Badak, what's the halacha? So, my Rabbi Eliezer ben Antignus Mishum Reb Elazar Reb Yanai Omar, Treifa. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Antignus in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Yanai, it's a Treifa, Vasura Ba'achila. But it's not Matama, guys. Nafkamina between the Treifa and the Nevela is the Nevela is Matama, it's an Avatuma. A treifa you can't eat. But what? A treifa you can't eat, but it's not matama. So says the Tana Rebbe Eliezer ben Antignus in the name of Elazar Bar Yanai that it's a treifa and it's also to eat. B'masnita and Tana, however, in a Tosefta we learned nevela u'matama b'masa. It's a nevela and it'll be matama not only b'maga but even b'masa if you're carrying it without touching it. So again, you shechted the animal. Ken zayin the shchita was kosher v'yosha. You did everything perfect. No shahiyah, no hagrama, no ikra, no chalada. Everything was perfect. But you didn't check. No one holds it's kosher, guys. No one holds it's kosher. The question is, how severe halacha does it get? Is you didn't shecht it all and it's nevela, or it's shechted and it's a treifa and you can't eat it? So guys, firais, if it's a treifa you can't eat it, it's only an isser and achila. So I can't eat this. Just like a treifa you can't eat this. If it's an avela, we'll consider as if you didn't do a shchita. Here, you guys. If it's treifa, you did a shchita, but I'll give it the halacha of a treifa. If it's an avela, I didn't do a shchita. It's a geshmak achilik, guys, right? Again, I'm introducing you to the Gemara. The guy did an act of shchita. He doesn't check. Does checking go ahead and make it what into? Or lack of checking, does it make it like I didn't check at all? Says the Tana of the Tosefta, yeah. It's an Avela. Says Rabbi Eliezer ben Avtinis, no, you shechted. You don't know if it's a good shechit or not, so therefore you can eat it. But the Avela, it isn't. Says the Gemara. B'mai kamiflagi, bid the Rav Huna. They're arguing in Rav Huna, and Rav Huna's din, guys, is the aside for the next few dafin. Rav Huna's din, guys, this is from the most famous famous Gemaras in Shas. This is the halachas of Chazaka and Roiv. Guys, these are halachas of Chazaka and Roiv. In other words, really tenets of the Talmud, if I can make up a word. The tenant, make it into the blog. The tenets of the Talmud. These are really sadistic din, the din of Chazaka. Okay, says the word, the Amri, behemet bechayeha, becheskas isra medes. When an animal is alive, guys, it's in the chazaka of Issa. You know what we call it? Eva min achai. Guys, when an animal, when an animal is alive, it's called Eva min achai. It's also to eat. You can't eat it. That's when it's alive. Until you find out that it was how it was geschachten. Nishcheta, once it's geschachten, how he becheskas heter. Now the Gemara is going to ask, guys, why do you have to say becheskas heter? Cheskas is meaning I have a problem, so I have to make it depending on the chazaka. It's not cheskas heter. Why don't you say it's mutter to eat? No, it was chazaka of Issa. Now you're shechter. What do you mean it's cheskas heter? It's not cheskas heter. It's mutter to eat. The Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean cheskas heter? I'm just, okay? Yeah, Baruch.
Just making the comparison between Isser and Heter.
No. Cheska mean that you're using, there's a chazaka that influences halacha. It's not a chazaka. It's mutter to eat now. You had a chazaka of Issa. You shechted. What kind of chazaka do you have now? You can eat it. You can eat it. I say Gemara. And the Gemara is against the kasha. Until what? You find out that it's a treifa. Now, Mar Savar, the Cheskas Issa Kaima, Mar Savar, it was alive, Vahashta Mesa, now it's dead. And therefore what? It's Metama, it's a Nevela. That is the Tana of the Tosefta guys. It was Becheskas Isser when it was alive. Now it's dead. So what is it? It's dead. It's a Metama. Umas Savar, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Avtinois, he holds, Antigonus holds, Becheskas Isser. It's not Becheskas Mace, it's Becheskas Isser, to eat. Right? Amrinon. Right? Becheskas Tumaloy Amrinon. When we take it off the Chazaka, to what extent are we taking it off? Viewing it as it was alive, and now it's dead and it's Nevela? Or do we say no? It was alive, and now it's Usser. It's Usser because I don't know if I ever had the het of Shchita. But to say it's dead, that it's treifa, that I won't do. So they're arguing in Rav Huna. To what extent would I say this? Let's do some Rashi, guys. Let's do some Rashi. Let's do the Rashi. Behema, b'chayeha, b'cheskas issa. Shari surah mishum eva minachai. It's asur al swat, al eva minachai. Hilkach, im noilet safik b'shchita, ubola mida al cheskasa, shari b'chol dover at ha'omer hemid dover al cheskasai, shahaya mitchila. Guys, we always put it back to its status quo. In other words, if I didn't do anything to change this, meaning the shchita is the only thing that can change it, I'm going to keep it on its status quo, which was one of Isser. Yes? Which one of Isser. I'm not able to take it from its chazaka through a suffix, whether it was a good shchita or not. Guys, this is seminal Rashi. Here what he's telling you. That Rashi is telling you to take something of its chazaka, you don't need a suffix, you need a vadai. I need a vadai shchita to take it off from being given menachai. If I don't have a vadai shchita, I can't do that. So it says, continues Rashi, Nimsa oimer shebehema zu asura, shebecheskes isa haisa tchila. Umesafik atabal, umesafik ba'atal tera. Now you want to motivate out the suffix shchita, shemen shchita kiroi, al tatirenu misafik atshi yivadl chashin is kiroi. You can't go ahead and suffix say it's a good shchita and say it's mutter until you prove it's a good shchita. Nishchita hari becheskes heter. Ashi yivadl chavimai nitshafa, ulakama mefarish, we're going to ask, my nafkamina, uberesha de milsa kamiflgi, the hashta noilid lanu safik b'shchita, shemalay nishchita roi. Okay, masa b'cheskas is. So Rishon, I medesh leihoyse shchuta wasn't the kivin the b'cheskas shein shchuta mukmis lahari mesu metama. Since it is cheskav, not you don't have a shchita, so you can consider it tamei. Umasavar and Eliezer ben Antigonus holds b'cheskas is aminan. Ulachiluhu shenesra koidim shchita. It was asati beforehand, and now it's asati. So again, machloikis. So you need a chazariba. You need a shchita. You have to be boidik the two simanim. If you're not boidik two simanim, what's the halacha, guys? You might have thought it's kosher because this guy's a bloody expert. Excuse the pun. He is an expert, right? He knows he's been shechting for years. They never had one problem. You know what? He had a bad day and he didn't check the simanim. Vos is the halacha. Everyone holds it's asa to eat. Question: to what extent halacha do we give this animal? Says the Tanakama of the Tosefta, Ad Kedei Kach will consider it a dead animal, no shchita at all. It'll be tamei. Nevela. It'll be tamei tumas mago masa. Says Rabbi Eliezer ben Antignis, no. Inyan Issa. We won't view it as a dead animal. Can I eat it or not eat it? But we won't view it as nevela. We'll view it as a treifa. Yes, Hes.
So why don't we, maybe that's the Gemara is going to talk about that next. But like if this guy's an expert, he's an expert up till that point in time, and he didn't check, we'll go upon his past history and say his chazaka that is probably was good.
You have no chazaka on the animal, Hesh. You have to check to see. You have to check. But I don't understand.
Even so,
it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. You have to check.
Right.
I want to ask you a question. Let's say guy is an expert shaykhit. Do you have to check the lungs to make sure?
Yeah, it doesn't do with the guy.
I mean, you have to check.
Right.
You have to check. I mean, this halacha in expert shchita, you have to check. In other words, you have to check. You have to check. Okay. Anyway, so that's the machlekes. Okay. Vilema nishchita hutra. So here's the kasha, guys. Look back at the statement. The Amma behema bechaya becheskas isay medes ashiva lechem man nishchita harihu becheskas heta. What's cheskas? Just say nishchita hutra, guys. Nishchita hutra. I'm contrasting the previous statement. Cheskas isa until you know what that was geschachten. Once it's geschachten, hutra. What do you mean becheskas? What does the cheskas come in? Cheskas is you're keeping it on, guys. Cheskas means the following: I'm keeping on chazaka because I have a suffix to go further, so I have to put it back over here. Where's the future problem that you have to come into a chazaka? Where's the future problem? It was asa, you shechted it, cheskas isa, hutra, lema, nishchada hutra. Says the Gemara, Hakamash. The afal gav, this yalid bo reusa. Now let's say a reusa happens, guys. Now you taka, Baruch, you hear. Now you're gonna have another problem that you have to be minded on this chazaka. Guys, look at me. What does the chazaka do? Guys, look at me. Look, we mean here, chazaka establishes if I have a problem over here, I'm gonna put it on chazaka. So if I have a problem in the shkita that I didn't check, I'm gonna keep it on chazaka. Now, you told me you shechted, right? My chazaka now is that it's mutter. Fred the Gemara, why don't I need a chazaka? Where's your next problem that it should be mutter? Now comes the problem, right? We're going to see the problem that you have to come onto the chazaka, okay? But in other words, there's a future problem that you have to be minded with that chazaka. There's a future problem that you have to be minded with that chazaka. What's the future problem? Kideboy mine Rebbe Abba Mirav Huna. Boaz the Eiv comes along a wolf, v'natal b'nei me'ayin. So guys, you went ahead, you shechted what? You shechted the animal. Now you're checking for trephus, and the small intestines are taken away by a wolf. Now, when the wolf takes it away, you're going to have holes in the small intestines. If the wolf did not make those holes, it's a treifa. If the wolf makes the holes, it's great. Good. So what's the problem? What's the shiloh over here? You see holes in it. Did the wolf make it? Or maybe the wolf, when he bit into an existing hole, and it was a treifa. In that case, we'll put it on its chazaka of heta. That's the next problem that you put back into the chazaka. That's the next problem that you're putting it back on the chazaka. Says the Gemara. Bozei v'natal b'nei me'ayin mahu. Fred Gemara natal halesna. What's your problem? He took it. Yeah, he took it. That's it. Nothing to talk about. So Ella nakav b'nei me'ayin. He made there's holes in b'nei me'ayin. So mahu nakav nekav hakachazin. Right? It's the havi nekvinu. You saw there was holes in it. Ella notlon v'echziron. He took it and he returned it. Kashein nekuvin when it had holes in it. Mahu michayesh shema b'mokam nekav nakav. Maybe what he chayesh that there was there from beforehand, and it's a treifa, It's one of the 18 treifas. Yes, or no? Or we say Ein choshen shema b'makom nekav nakav. Okay, one more time. Let's go through one more time, guys. One more time. Rav Huna said a statement. Rav Huna said you had a chazaka of Isser until you established there was a shchita. Once there's established shchita, okay, so if you didn't check the simanim, you're going to put it on the chazaka of Isser. Okay, I checked the simanim. Fred the Gemara, Rav Huna says it's becheskas heter. What's the cheskas heter? It's mutter. Just say it's mutter. You can eat it. Says the Gemara, no. There's a problem, another problem. In the Bedika process to make sure it's not a treifa, a wolf took off with the what? With the B'nai Mayayin. And he returned it. So now, what's your problem that you have to come onto the chazaka? Do we say that when the wolf took it, he bit it, and there were holes there beforehand, and when he bit it, literally he ended up in the same hole, and therefore, since there were holes there before, it was a treifa? Or do we say, no, the holes there are by the wolf? If the hole's there by a wolf, it's mutter. If not, it's aser. It's a treifa. On that, the Gemara is saying you have a cheskas heta, guys. The chazaka of heta will allow me to go ahead and eat this meat, and I'll say that the wolf made the holes and there wasn't an existing hole over there. Eseve, okay. Rod sipor hamenake beteino. If you see a bird going ahead pecking at a fig, the achbar hamenake be'avatichim, and a mouse or a rat, a rodent, it's making holes in a melon on the base. Chosheshin v'chayish shema b'mokov nekav nokav. Maybe they're pecking at a hole that was there before. Says Rashi, what are we concerned about? Shel nachash nokav. A nachash had gone ahead and bitten there, put its fangs in and injected its venom, and now when it's being menaker, right? So you have to worry about that. So by the wolf in treifus, you were not worried. By the venom of a snake, you are worried. So that's very, very good. So you have a very good teretz. So who's speaking to who? I'm saying share. So in one place we are worried and the other place not. Guys, can you tell me the difference? One place is Issa, the other place is Sakana. One place is Issa, the other one is Sakana. Says Gemara, Amalei, Mi Kamedamis Isur Sakanta, Sakana shiny. Sakana is different. If you're worried about a snake, I'll worry about that what? That it's covered up. When it comes to Isser, that I'm not worried about. When it comes to Isser, I'm not worried about that. Amalei Rava, Maishna Safik Sakanta L'chumra, Safik Isur Nami L'chumra. I don't understand. You're right. Danger is danger, and Isser is Issa. But when it comes to halachas deraisa, we're also machmir. So why by the wolf are we not machmir? Why are we not machmir and say maybe this small intestine had holes in it, and therefore it was a tray for the animal? Why are we concerned? We should be go l'chumra. So Amalei Abaya, v'leishayni ben yisur l'sakanta. You tell me there's not a difference? Anyway, the art school says on this Gemara, it's a very complex Gemara, and he just gives you marmakoimis. So just to give you an idea, for us, it's a nice short daf. but this is the Schmeitzes over here. You'll see art school on the bottom. He tells you, he didn't go into it. He goes, this is a complex Gemara, see the Rishonim, see the Chef Schmeitzer. There's a lot of stuff here. Okay, anyway, l'chol hapachas. For us, we're going weiter. So now, he says, you don't make a difference between what? So l'chayra, right off the bat, you can see the problem. L'chayra Rav is gerecht. So what does the Abaye say? Rav is masking that there's a difference between sakana and chumrah. But however, by suffix deraisa, we go l'chumrah, you should be chayish for the wolf. And we amul Abaye of leishani ben yisrael l'sakanta, v'ilu suffix tumah b'shus harabim. Right? So you have suffix tumah b'shus harabim. That's three people, guys. B'shus harabim is three people. Sveikei tahar. V'ilu suffix mayim megulim asurim. So you have a suffix of iser of tumah. You can say it's tahar. When it comes to suffix mayim megulim, whether the water was left open and you have a problem of giloi and a snake going ahead and taking a drink and it's asa. So you see we're more machmir by sakanta. Amalei Rabbi told Abaye hasam hilchas gemirila misaita. We have halacha Mala Saita B'Shus Avtumah B'Shus Hayachid. Mashenkim B'Shus Rabbim. Okay? Whether you learn that the suffix Tum B'Shus Rabbim by B'Shus Rabbim is this is a big, that's the big Taisus over here. So l'chayr there's a difference. In other words, I have a Lachal Mosh Sinai over here to Matter. To Matter, the three people that what? Lachal Mosh Sinai to Matter, and therefore we're Mekel. But therefore what? Okay. Masiv Rav Simi, Sheretz Bepi Chulda. You have a sheretz which is dead. It's one of the avasatum. It's an avatuma in the mouth of a weasel. The chulda mehalechas al gabe kikrois shel truma, and the chulda is walking on loaves of truma bread. And suffik naga, suffik whether the sheretz touched it or not, suffik loy naga or it didn't touch it or not. Now, sveikai tahar, the suffik is tahar. The suffik, even in Rishus HaYachid, Sveika is going to be tar. Even Rishus HaYachid, Sveika will be tar. Okay? V'ilu Safik Mayim Megulim Asurim. So you see again, Rav Simi saying that what? When it comes to Sakana, will be more Machma than Isser. And for the Gemara, Hasanami Hilchsa Gemirila, Misaita, Masaita Davash Yesh Badash Lishoel, Achavanami Davash Yesh Badash Lishoel. Over there by the Saita, you could ask her. Yeah. In other words, the dimyan to Saita is where does the Saita take place, fellas? Where does the suffix arise? Suffix Saita. Again, a Vadei Saita is you're going to kill her. A suffix Saita is where you're going to go through the Meimarim. Where does it take place? In Rishus HaYachid. And it's a suffix, and the Torah calls it Tameh. Can you ask her whether she did or she didn't? Could you ask the loaf of bread whether the sheretz touched it or not? You can't. So therefore, that's why it's tar, because it's not similar to what? To Saita. Amrav Ashi, Toshma, Tzleichis Shanicha Migula. You're talking about the Mei Saita. The Mei Paraduma water, guys. There's a Paraduma water. You have a flask of water, but you didn't put the Afer in yet. If you put the Afer in, it's going to be tummy anyway. You didn't put the Ash in. You just have the Mayim Chaim Al Kelly. So it's in there. And you leave it open. Ubo umatzah mechusa, and you find it closed. Fellas, if you find something closed, who closed it, an animal or a person? Clearly a person. Animals do not close things. They open things, but they don't close things. When the bear gets you garbage, he's not closing the can. He's ripping apart the garbage, right? So if you find it closed, you know a person closed it. Good? Now, Tameya, that's going to be Tameh. Because you know what we're going to say? We're going to say a Tameh to come in, closed it. Shani Oimer, Adam Tameh nichnas the Sham Bekisa, and he covered it up. However, Hanicha Mechusa, if you left it covered, Ubo Umatzah Megula, now you have options who uncovered it, right? Not only is it a human being could have uncovered it, but what? But an animal as well. Im Yechaylim Chulda Lishtais Mimenu, if a Chulda is able to get in there and drink, Oinachash Lediv Reb Gamliel, Oishayored but Tal Belayla, Pisula. Now guys, notice, and where you found it, you left it open, and you found it closed, it's Tameya. Over here, it's not Tameya, it's Psula. You can't use it, but it won't be Matama something. That's the key to the Sugya. The difference in Lashon, guys, between Tameya and Psula. So in other words, you're telling me for sure when you find it closed, that it's Tameh. However, when you find it open, the only chashad is a chulda and a nachash. Rashi brings, because the way they drink is they're going to put their stuff in, it's not going to be mayim chayim. Okay? Other animals, it seems that they just drink, but they don't put their own stuff in there. So these animals drink. Okay? So now, for Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, matam, what's the reason, the difference, fellas, that in the Reisha it's Tameh and the Sefer it's Pasal? Shedarklin shel shrotzim legalois, animals, they'll go ahead, shrotzim, they'll go ahead and uncover, ve'in darklin lechasois, says the top Rashi, shedarklin shel shrotzim legalois, ve'afagav the odam nami darka legalois, even though a person also can uncover it, and he might be Tameh, ikelimitli ba'adam tahar, we could say it's an adam tahar, ubishrotzim and shrotzim, that will not be metama, letar, uba'adam tameh letameh. So talin and basaruba letahar. Guys, there's a rive over here. There's a rive. Watch. You find it uncovered. So now, reasons to be metama is what? Is a tameh person, or a nachash according to Gamliel, or a chulda. But most of the shvatzim, it's not going to be tamei. Most of the people, if they're Torah, it's not going to be tamei. So if you go after Roiv, it'll be puzzle, but it won't be what? It won't be tamei. It'll be puzzle. You can't use it for mayim. It's not mayim chayim anymore, right? Mayim chamakeli. So it can't use it. Psul, it's puzzle to use for paraduma, but it won't be tamei to mitama oichlun or mashkin. Right? That's the difference between the two. Now skip a few lines. Ve'ilu safik mayim megulim asurim. So guys, over here by Isser, you see that what? We're saying it's not tamei when it's left open. And yet in the same case by mayim, you'd say it's what? It's sakana. Right? Shma mina chamir sakanta meisura. And it has nothing to do with sight anymore. Shma mina, we can ascertain that it's more chama, the sakana, than Issa. Shma mina, let's get to the two dots. Tan Hasam. Gimel mashkin asurim mishum giloi. There are three drinks that are asa mishum giloi. Mayim, v'yayin, v'chalav. In other words, you're worried that a snake might go ahead and inject its venom when it drinks from water, wine, and milk. Kama yishu v'yuasurin. How long does it have to be there until you have to worry about it? Kidei sheyetze harachash mimakim karov. That the rechash mitaych Yiddish, Kenny, akricha dekazach. Right? It's a snake. It crawls out. It crawls out. Rochash. It crawls out. And v'yishta. So the zman it would take for it to crawl out and drink. The kama makom karov. And how a close place? And Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yehuda, Kedei sheyetze mitachas oizen kli v'yishter, and to come out from underneath the kli and drink. Yishter hakachazile, eli yishter v'yachzil l'chayre. The amount of time it would take to come out, drink, and go back to what its hole. They must have had a time for that. We are not. We don't bisman hazeh. We don't live in a place where we have snakes. So the halachas of Giloy, according to the Shulchan Aruch, is not. Be aware the Grud did keep it. The Grud did keep the halachas of Gilui, but again, we're not machmir that.